A lot of people would say that in the last 5 years the disabled have been unfairly targeted, whether it was intentional or not, with the reorganisation of disabled living allowance, coming very close on it, turning out to be that they appear to be the group that are most affected by the bedroom tax, for the popular term for spare room subsidy. I always ponder, because pensioners were exempt and people living in local authority housing who weren't on benefits don't pay the spare room subsidy. So it just seems really unjust to me, and I know that a lot of my congregation feel that is...
Well, let me deal with it, because there's two questions there, one of which about the appraisal, if you like, of people who are living on long-term benefits, and then also the spare room subsidy, which is something slightly different. So starting with the first bit is the reappraisal and people being retested. When we came to power, there were, I think it was 3 million people who were on these long-term disability benefits. The government wasn't too sure, actually, what the true picture was like. It turned out that many people had gone on to long-term benefits many years ago and had been on them for some time. Now, it was a decision made by the Department of Work and Pensions. This is Ian Douglas-Smith to see, who's the Work and Pensions Secretary, to have a look and see what was going on there, and really to find out whether this was being the best outcome for people on disability. Now, I am the first to admit, without a shadow of a doubt, there were one or two, tens of thousands, if you like, of instances where it was very difficult for people who were being tested. And certainly as a local MP, we handled the casework for those individuals. But what was very interesting about it was, I think, of the 3 million people who were on these long-term benefits, actually I think 1 million of them decided to go for job seekers allowance rather than go through the process of being retested, suggesting that perhaps they were all taking the wrong benefits in the first place and this was not serving them better. Now, a lot of those people have gone back to work. In fact, most of them have gone back to work or been retrained. And actually, there's no doubt about it that everybody benefits. You are in a far better place, sort of mentally and with your position in society, if you have work and if you have sort of a certain amount of control in your life. And this is something which we're very keen to achieve, is to get people sort of into the sort of the community in terms of playing a role and feeling proud of their part of that community. At the other end of the scale, there were people who were on long-term disability benefits who actually discovered they were owed more, and so those people were actually more profoundly disabled than had originally been assessed, and actually they did better out of it. And then within the mix in the middle, there were a sort of wide variety of sort of changes one way or the other. And there's no doubt about it that, as I say, there were some mistakes made by Atos who was doing it.
What about mental health? Because that's really difficult to assess, and the whole stress of these reassessments. We know, classically they're reported, but there were suicides over this, and there are people who are saying, I won't claim the benefits, or I can't cope with the assessment, or I'm not entitled to job seekers, and they're falling through the net.
Well, we need to pick out those people who are not the norm, but certainly they're very important for every individual. It's the most important thing in their life. But what we can't do is sort of say, well, look, on the basis that there may be some people who the extremities have severe problems with what's going on, that we're not going to do everybody else, because that's letting down everybody. We need to be more sensitive. I do completely accept that there needs to be more sensitivity by Atos when they're going through this. But at the end of the day, you can't allow potentially 1 million people to be on disability benefits when actually they could be receiving training and all the rest of it. So how we handle that, I think, is not an unreasonable criticism either. I think I would go along with that. But we can't write policy for everybody based on the extremities.
So was the motivation getting people back to work, or was it saving money?
Getting people back to work, without a shadow of a doubt. Look, at the end of the day, we've had a problem actually with benefits, the amount of people on long-term benefits and all the rest of it. And one of the great achievements of this government is we've now got workless households down to the lowest level ever. So people are getting back into work. We've created more people in jobs. I know not everybody would agree that the best types of jobs, and perhaps there are a few too many part-time jobs than perhaps we'd like. But it's better to for your own well-being, to have a job than to have no job at all. It's people become better functioning citizens one way or the other. And the same applies for disabled people. actually you're better off if you're making a contribution. I mean, that's, clearly it's impossible for you to do it one way or the other, in which case society must help, and we really must.
Because we do have a very high proportion of people in work receiving benefits, don't we? I mean, I've heard that the largest proportion of benefits are actually paid to people in work.
It's certainly significant, but the in-work benefits, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something which Gordon Brown brought in, and to a certain extent, in-work benefits are effectively subsidising employers from paying higher wages. And the in-work benefit that came in, but I mean, you can, so as I understand it, then you can actually get in-work benefits up to, receiving £40,000 or £50,000, I think £40,000 in income. Very small, but you still can. So the in-work benefits are something that was brought up by Gordon Brown, and that doesn't necessarily mean, if you're on £40,000 or £30,000 a year, you're not going to be hard up at that level unless your expenditure is too high. So you're going to have in-work benefits paying for an awful lot of people. It's at the bottom end there that I really care about, is those people who really are struggling that we need to. We need to help.
And was the whole thing with the bedroom tax and how it happened a mistake?
Well, it was Labour policy originally. I mean, I think that was the interesting point about it. Was Labour brought it in for private landlords, and we extended it to community housing landlords. Look, I think there are a couple of things with this. I mean, your question originally talked about disabled people, and it's just simply not the case that disabled people are being affected by this, because there are funds available where, if a disabled person needs a spare bedroom for medical equipment, the council has a fund which is specifically there to pay for that.
At least you saw the hole and filled it.
But
because originally there was a lot of campaigning about it, wasn't there?
No, but that was always part of the process. It was always recognised there are going to be special cases with this. So it was always the case that you were going to have this fund available for people who had unique situations. And we've got the families of service personnel. We've got people who are have disabilities or have medical needs where they need a spare room to keep this type of stuff, or a carer. I mean, all of this stuff is kind of within the Act, and it was always going to be there. And
it's quite stressful to lose it from your benefits and then have to apply for it elsewhere, isn't it? And there's always a gap of time in the middle.
Yes, but the council, I mean, the Wyre Forest Community Housing is there to help people get through that process. I mean, I've met with them to make sure that's happening. I mean, look, we have to have a system where we can look. I mean, if you wind back, why do we have this whole so-called bedroom tax, the spare room subsidy in place in the first place? For the simple reason that we have huge numbers of people who are, families who cannot find somewhere to live. Now, if we have a situation where we have somebody who's living by themselves, or two people living in a house with 4 bedrooms, who are enjoying that, and then at the same time you have a family of a mother and father and 3 kids living in a bedsit, what is the equality in that? What is the equity in that? It's just completely wrong that you have this young couple who are struggling to bring up a young family, who are really having a tough time, who come and see me in my surgery looking for help, when we know we've got available resources for people who don't need to have multiple spare rooms. And it's just fair.
But a lot of the people in that situation, are they not pensioners?
Yes, there are, and it's been a conscious decision by this government that because pensioners have the least amount of ability to be able to change their circumstances, people plan all their life for their retirement, and when they retire, it gives them a limited amount of ability to be able to change their plans. That actually it would be the wrong thing to do necessarily to include pensioners in that. I've had plenty of people actually complaining to me about this from political parties across the whole spectrum, councillors, and look, I mean, I do completely understand the point. I mean, I really do see that that is something which people worry about. If you're going to apply this, you should be applying it to everybody. And clearly, some people would argue that pensioners are the most obvious ones, where all the children have left. They've grown up, they've gone. But I'd still maintain it's a difficult balance between what you can and can't. But lots of them are moving, actually. Yeah. We've got lots of retirement places being built here. So
we've got lots of retirement accommodation being built.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
and actually, certainly from within my own congregation, I'm finding people are moving and willing to move at that stage.
And if they are willing, that's great because they free up a house. Absolutely. But should they be forced? And that's a difficult question. Look, absolutely. I mean, I've had sort of plenty of pensioners come to me and they've complained about the fact their house is too big and it's costing too much to run, and they'd far rather run a much smaller house. But as I say, look, that was a decision.
And we haven't got the stock.
Well, you just said we have. I mean,
with the private ones, but we haven't got the.
They're building it. I mean, there are policies that are coming through which are trying to encourage people to build it. We've got a huge amount of building going on in Wyre Forest, and of course, it's a district council thing. I mean, the district council sets its 10-year local plan, and it has to decide what it wants, and in terms of the type of housing, the profile, the amount of schools and education, schools and hospital places, GP surgeries, all that kind of stuff. And that's what the council does. So one would hope the council would get that right.